There are a lot of titles to review. I'm in a bit of a reading slump and I need to hold myself accountable to read my actual ridiculously large manga collection. So we are going to start reviewing what I read like every week or 2 weeks just to keep myself on track. So if you see me not post in a while, feel free to yell at me for not reading what I own. I know this looks like a lot, but for context, I used to read like somewhere between 4 to 5 volumes a night, and I have not done that in a while and would like to get back to it. We are going to start with the new series, and then we'll move into like the new volumes and series I've already read. So let's start with the Princess Groom. So fun story about this one. I was actually supposed to do a sponsored review about this one in like 2025. So I read all the chapters, I wrote a script, I pilled out panels, I filmed a whole thing, I turned it in. I was so excited because I really enjoyed the story, but then something happened. I don't know if it was licensing issues. I probably couldn't tell you even if I knew what happened, but essentially we were not allowed to post it and I had to pick a different title. So I am very excited to actually finally talk about this one now that we have it physically in print. This is a hidden personality role reversal fantasy romance with a twist that I'm not going to spoil for you. It's set in a world that has magic, mercenaries who are fighting like giant ice dragons, and our lead is really like passionate and wants to do things like fight, but because she looks like a doll, she's expected to be this like demure, perfect little girl. So she's supposed to marry the second prince, Gilbert, who has a terrible reputation. He's supposed to be like this huge womanizer. He goes to brothels all the time. He also is supposed to be cursed because of his eyes, like essentially not the person you want to marry. So they finally meet and she is surprised to see that like he is not exactly as he seems. He's maybe a little bit shyer. And so everything sort of comes to a head when they get attacked by mercenaries. And he sort of is like, you should run because, you know, she has this reputation of being this perfect little doll. And she's like, nah, man, I'm gonna fight these mercenaries, and then reveals her big secret, which I won't spoil for you. This is just a cool story overall. I love the art. There's cool gender dynamics. Like, it's just a fun little story. I will say after the first reveal, and it's not in this volume yet, it does sort of get a little bit less exciting from what I had read back in 2025, but maybe it picks up later. But overall, if you like a fantasy romance, like this was a really fun one to read. Then we have Horon of the Closed Country. This is another fantasy. So this woman is on the run and the only place left for her to go is to go through this forest that has a reputation that if you run through it, it's going to take what's most precious from you. The most precious thing to her is her daughter. So she makes it through this forest and her daughter is missing. So we jump ahead years later and she's still looking for her daughter. She has not really made any headway in finding her. She's going around sort of working as a mercenary, protecting merchants as they move between cities, and she runs into this kid who is passed out outside of the forest, has absolutely no memories. All of a sudden they're being attacked by these thorny like harbinger things, and all they realize is this kid can actually stop the harbingers from coming. And so they go on a journey to try to find her daughter, figure out what's going on with this kid. It's a really interesting fantasy world, very much just developing in this first volume, but enough that like the stakes felt really high. The world felt really cool with these different harbingers. There's a little bit of a twist at the end. It overall just felt like an interesting fantasy. And from what I know of what the Manga Mavericks talked about at Otakon, I believe the kid is actually a non-binary character. I think they use they, them pronouns, but it wasn't like clearly laid out in this volume. City Light's Birthday is one of the best things I've read in a while. It was one of those, it's just one volume, but I like read the whole thing. I was not expecting it much because it is one volume, and it's one of those, I finished it and I just sat there and sort of stared at it for a while. It's wonderful. So it is an Omegaverse. It's one of the best ones I have ever read. Essentially, we have our lead, who is a beta, meets an Omega who is working at a brothel trying to save up money to hire a detective to find who he thinks to be his fated mate that he met when he was a kid. And so our lead is helping him, even though it's like sort of against his own interests because he starts being interested in this Omega. I can't really tell you much more without spoiling it, so I'm not really going to give you the details, but just the way that this lays it out, like emotionally, the way the mystery plays out, the way each character is feeling, some of the reveals at the end, it's like heartbreaking, but also hopeful. And it's just one of the best Omegaverse stories I've ever read. I cannot recommend it highly enough. Like for a one volume story, I mean, for any story, it is so incredibly well developed emotionally, but specifically for being one volume, it's insane to me the amount of development that's in this. So like definitely recommend it. It is a mature title, but if you were looking for sort of this like going against fate romance, it's just so good. Daydream Darling. So I was sponsored and paid to do a review of this one on TikTok and Instagram, but like not on this platform. This is not a sponsored post. It's just going to be my like thoughts about it. So this is a high school romance with our lead who has a hard time communicating with other people. She's just started high school and, you know, we're midway through the year and she still doesn't really have any friends. But she does have one person. She sneaks out to talk to her senpai who she met actually when she was trying to get into this school. She was studying in the library and she learned that like you can communicate through gestures and things, and he actually gave her notes to get into this school. So she sneaks out and she talks to him. He's sort of her one sort of saving grace at this school. But her classmates start to get really worried about where she's sneaking off to, and that sort of kicks our plot into motion. It's a pretty classic setup. There's nothing like too crazy here. There is a big reveal in this volume. I did not find it that surprising. I expected it sort of to come as I was reading it, but I thought it was a really effective reveal and sort of kicks off the plot in a really nice way. I did find the lead after a while a little bit annoying with some of the choices that she's making. I understand why she's making them, but for me, it did get a little bit tiring after a while. But I really enjoyed the side characters in this one. They already have their own arc and sort of already had a development happen in it. I found them really compelling. So overall, I'm really interested to see where this one goes because, like I said, it does have that reveal and I'm curious how it will be handled. I'm hoping it will be in an interesting way and not just sort of that she keeps doing it because I think it'll get tiring after a while. But overall, like cute high school romance. Her Kiss, My Libido, Twinkles. It's a weird title, I know. This I got off of Kickstarter. It's actually one of the authors from the Galette Yuri magazine, which is how I found out about the Kickstarter. So this is a romance that's based around the fact that two girls met in the hospital. One of them, our lead, we know she was in there because she broke a limb. The other one has like a bunch of mystery around her. She doesn't have a phone. She doesn't really seem to have any other friends. She starts a relationship with our lead and it, to be honest with you, feels a little unhealthy. She has some moments where she just gets this like creepy blank stare and seems very territorial about her friends. So like does not feel that it is depicting the most healthy relationship. I do think that's the point here. But it was like legitimately creepy at times, like the way she interacts. There's already some conflict with her friends as well. Overall, like seems like it'll be an interesting sort of psychological elements, toxic romance, most likely. So definitely enough to have me like really intrigued to see what happens next. A Crow's Ballad at Dawn. This was sent in PR to me from Yen Press. This was a really enjoyable fantasy romance for me. This follows a burnout businessman who helps save a boy who's being bullied. It turns out that boy is actually a yokai, and so to thank him, he gives him these tokens for a brothel in the House of Mist, which is like in the world of yokai. And he goes in and he meets this Tengu, Crow Tengu, who is working at the brothel and is sort of stuck here because of a mistake that he made in his past. And so our lead saves him when he's sort of being bullied by a customer, and they meet and have an evening together and they start making this connection, but like their time together is limited because they can only meet with these tokens. And so sort of from there, things unfold. They both have really interesting backstories. I thought the world that was set up was really interesting, this whole House of Mist and the lore behind it. There was a lot of conflict built up. The ending felt a little flat to me in the sense that it did feel like things were just magically resolved and all the consequences just disappeared, and I don't really know where that came from. So that was a little bit disappointed to me, but overall I really enjoyed the story. I like the art a lot. I'm really excited that there are other titles in this House of Mist that I believe that we are going to get in the future. The Oblivious Girl and the Maidenly Man. This is a slice of life that sort of, you know, those short chapters where we are seeing the connection between these two people. So we have our man who is running a cafe who is more feminine presenting, and we have a woman who is terrified of men. Essentially, she was stalked in her hometown, ran away to the city, but had already developed a fear of men that she's trying to overcome, but has a really hard time with it. But she's not scared of this cafe owner, probably because of how he presents. And so he decides to help her overcome her fear with like exposure therapy. So like slowly holding her hand, things like that. And of course he has a crush on her. And his big concern is that like she doesn't see him as a romantic interest because she's not afraid of him. So he thinks that she doesn't see him as a man. There's not a ton of depth here. It is very much like slice of life, just their interactions, how she's getting more comfortable with him, how he is sort of like freaking out about, you know, signals and does she like him, does she not? But I thought it was a really cute read. The Marshal King. This is another one that I was sponsored to do for Viz on the other two platforms, not on this one. This is a spaghetti western. It's about a boy who is the son of the most famous outlaw who has killed his father to gain entry into the Marshal Academy. And he's going to this academy for a reason that I won't spoil for you. And it's sort of this, like, he's stuck between two worlds, between the outlaws and the marshals, and which one is he actually on the side of, and we don't really know. So he already has a good conflict to start out with. I really like the rival character they introduced. She is the daughter of the most famous marshal, so she makes like a really good foil to him. I will say overall the humor in this was not to my taste. Like at the beginning he's wandering the desert naked and there's some like jokes about that. It's just not my personal sense of humor, but the overall plot I thought was interesting. I thought the setting was really refreshing compared to anything I'd read in a while. I felt like a lot was actually resolved in this volume, so I'm really curious to see where this one's gonna go, because like what felt like was gonna be the main plot sort of was already resolved. So I'm really curious to see what's gonna happen next in this one. It's sort of like a refreshing battle shonen if you're looking for something new. When You Wake Up Tomorrow, this is a series of short stories. Two of them are directly interconnected, like the characters show up in the other story. The first one is, I believe, 2 chapters, and it's following a couple as they're like looking to sort of spice up their bedroom routine now that they are living together. The second one is about 2 people who are sort of trying to become a couple. And then the third story, which I thought was the weakest, was about sort of overcoming some trauma and with gardening, kind of. These are cute stories. There's not like tons of depth here because they are so short, but like overall, if you are looking for a cute little slice of life, I thought this was funny and interesting. The Golden Fly, this was off of another Kickstarter. It's just 1 chapter, and I will say I found it a little bit disappointing. So it's set in Paris between a performer, I think she's an actress, and her maid, and it's not a happy story at all, which things don't have to be happy for me to enjoy them, but I would prefer more depth if it's just gonna be depressing. Essentially, like, we're thrown in the middle of this. We sort of see them meet at the beginning, and then we see that like the performer doesn't treat everyone great. The people don't treat her great. Then we skip forward and see sort of the consequences of the actions and get sort of some thoughts of how the maid feels about the performer. I didn't love it. It was very short. I get that it's just 1 chapter, but it didn't feel like enough really happened here. It was just sad. Like it just, if you're looking for like a sad story, this is definitely it, but it didn't provide enough for me to really find much enjoyment in it. Clumsy Kiss, this was also sent in PR from Yen Press. So this is another high school romance, and it's kind of like a mistaken identity. So Kumai works up the courage to ask out one of his classmates through a text message, but he texts the wrong person. And so the next day, instead of the girl showing up, it's the most popular boy in class, and he's really excited that they're finally dating. And so our lead is like too shy and empathetic to like crush his happiness. And so he just goes along with it, but now there's sort of this like secret looming over his head. This has a really fun POV switch midway through the story, which is one of my favorite things. You sort of see what happened earlier from a different perspective, and it changes how you saw the story in the first place. Overall, I thought this was cute. There were some introspective moments. The holographic cover on this is really fun. There's not a ton of depth here or anything. It's just a cute little 1-volume story. Psychedelia, this is a 1-volume detective romance. So essentially we have 2 detectives. One has always had a crush on the other one, and he gets shot. And so then all of a sudden he's sort of being haunted by the guy in his apartment while he's in a coma, trying to sort of figure out what happened to cause him to get shot. This felt like pretty classic. It followed sort of the natural tropes you get of this sort of like I'm being haunted romance storyline. There was nothing revolutionary here. It was fine. I personally could have used a little bit more of the story fleshed out, a little bit more. The detective stuff like they threw in there felt like it was just thrown in there. It didn't really add much to the story. So I think if that was going to be in there, it should have been just a little bit more developed. It just felt sort of like an afterthought. So that part of the story is not super strong, but the romance was good. Colori, Colore, Creare. This was also sent in PR from Titan Manga. So this is a fantasy slice of life about a little girl who meets this giant black cat. And sort of the whole premise here is that her life has been sort of restricted by the radius her grandfather will allow her to go on walks. She's not supposed to walk past where she can see this windmill, and suddenly she sort of starts throughout the story, her world starts expanding and she sees more of the scenery and she meets new people. And the whole thing is there's this woman who has moved to town who's sort of like a preschool teacher. So she's going around and helping her expand her world. Some of the plot, I don't know that I actually fully understood, especially the preschool teacher. Like it seems like something more is going on because she's on the phone all the time and I don't know who she's talking to. And it's also unclear to me if this black cat is real or if it's like an imaginary friend. I'm not sure that we're supposed to know at this point. I really enjoyed the art. The world was cool. Like, it's just not one that, like, if you're looking for a super clear-cut, well-developed plot that I would recommend, but if you want just, like, a cool fantasy world, this is definitely that. Lynx. This is another one that I was sponsored by Viz on TikTok and Instagram, but not this platform, so this is just, again, unfiltered thoughts. I actually loved this. This is a really cool, like, detective sci-fi story that also is, like, kind of a tragic GL. The art and the story pacing kind of reminded me of Lost Lad London, if you've read that one. It's also, it felt very, like, Umbrella Academy vibes, like, if you've seen that show, which was one of my favorites until the 4th season. So this is, like, in a bioenhancement world, so there's, like, a talking cat, and our lead is a detective who's going around trying to solve murders, and there's this really gruesome one, and she keeps seeing this angel who kind of looks like her wife, and the feathers keep showing up at the murder scenes, and sort of she's trying to figure out what's happening. It's a hard one to describe without spoilers, so I'm trying to be as vague as possible because I do think, like, the way it's paced out is really important. I was really, really intrigued by this. I really want to know what's happening with these murders. There's a reveal at the end that was, like, super cool. So like, if you like things like the Umbrella Academy, like Lost Lad London, like murder mystery, detective things, tragic romance, like the sci-fi, bioenhancement stuff, like, this was really cool. Okay, now we are going to move on to the continuing volume. So I'm not going to give you, like, a big summary of what the plot is, because my assumption is if you're watching this part, you are familiar with the series. And there will be some, like, light spoilers because, again, my assumption is, like, you know what's going on with these. But I will try to avoid, like, big spoilers if I can. I Want to Be Your Girl, volumes 3 and 4. These are the last volumes of the series. The ending of this was spoiled for me when I posted my review of the first volume, so take that into context, but I was not that upset about the ending. I know a ton of people absolutely hated it, but to me, the two of them were never endgame, even from reading the first volume. It was pretty clear that that was not where this was going to go. I think it's also pretty clear that Akira is not the main character, which is a shame. Like, it does feel like she deserves to be a main character, and I kind of hope there would be a spin-off about her, especially her life after high school. I did like that the focus at the end wasn't just about the romance, that she was shown to be happy without necessarily saying whether or not she has a partner. I think especially because this is for a younger age group, showing that happily ever after can be having a really good network of friends and not relying on having a spouse. I think that's a really good message to have. However, I do think it's weird then when you have every other character have their focus on that they are getting married or that they have a child. Like, it felt weird leaving Akira out of that. I wish they had just not shown it for any of them, though I did really like the two that ended up together, and I like that they had Akira name their child. Some of the characters in these last two volumes did feel like they were just there to sort of give their moral speech on whatever idea they were trying to convey, like having the teacher there talk about what aromantic is, which is super important and great that they had it in there, but I wish he had been utilized more than that. It just felt like that was the only reason they were there, which again is important to have the messaging for the younger demographic, but it just feels like the world could have been fleshed out a little better. Overall, I enjoyed this series, but I do understand why people were not happy with where it went if you were looking for specifically a trans Yuri, but also just like having the trans character be the main character. The Remarried Empress Volume 10. I am super glad that the love potion thing did not last that long. I was very worried at the end of the last volume. I will say I'm having a hard time with the plot on some of these because there's such a long wait between the volumes since I read the physicals. Some of these like little side characters in the new nation that she's trying to like win over, the different royalty and stuff, I can't keep track of them. I'm going to be really honest with you. So that part of the story is falling a little flat for me just because like they all seem kind of similar. They're not super distinct. They're all sort of just like the followers of the other women that she's trying to win over. So like that part I haven't been super invested in. I actually found Rashta's storyline much more interesting. This poor girl feels like she just has so much against her and I don't think she's going to get out of it, but I'm just finding that much more compelling in this part of the story. Drawing from Your Memory Volume 2, the cliffhangers in this are going to kill me. They're diabolical. I love that it started from a different perspective, that he's like figured out what's happened. He's being supportive of her. They're coming up with a plan for if it gets reset again, I think is really interesting. The ending, again, diabolical. Like, I have to know what's going on with this guy because like clearly something is very wrong or he made some choice that has ruined this for all of them. Like, I need to know what happens next, and the next volume doesn't come out until October. Marriage Toxin Volume 14. I thought the ending for Nabs was really well done. Obviously, it's sad that she died, but I liked that they let her die with him on her own terms. Like, it was just, I thought, a really interesting way to resolve that storyline and sort of have her be the leader of a clan and sort of see how she goes out. I love that Garo has a new rival. Like, he's really fun. Don't love another girl has just like disappeared. That seems to be a theme. And the meeting with his family was terrifying. Like, I am so terrified for Kinosaki. That was frightening. I'm just, things are not going to go well from here on out, I can tell, and I'm just very concerned. And I might start reading it on the Manga Plus app because I don't know if I can wait for these volumes. Perfectly Fine on My Own Volume 3. I love that we are focusing on Nicole and like her studies and what she wants to do in the future. I think that's just like a really cool thing to have in this story. I love that Chaos is still just like an idiot and his friends are calling him out on it still. He has improved though, so that's good. And I did really like the introduction of Claude. I have no idea if he's supposed to be a love interest. I frankly don't care, but I think it's interesting like having him do things differently than sort of the other nobles and whatever's going on with his fiance. Like, I think that was just really, has me really intrigued. Demons of the Shadow Realm Volume 11. Reading this while watching the anime was very confusing because the episode they're on in the anime is very similar to what is happening in this. So I honestly got very confused the next day when I watched the next episode of the anime. I was so worried about Haro. He's my favorite. Obviously, I love the little rabbit and the tortoise and was very concerned about him. I thought the stuff that happened at the mansion was super cool, and I'm really excited to see what Sensei does because I love when a sort of relatively chill character freaks out. Rightfully freaks out, but like freaks out and sort of like unleashes, you know? So I'm very excited for the next volume. The Night in Her Emperor Volume 2. This was sent in PR from Inklore. I loved how her relationship with Donau changed over this volume. I just thought it was really cute and really well developed. I think the rumors about Paul and the Emperor like feel very realistic. That does feel like what would actually happen if a female knight was sort of rising the ranks like she is. I think it's hilarious that they are actually glad that the rumors are happening about her because they were so worried that people thought that he was gay because of his relationship with his former knight. So I thought that was really interesting. I think overall, this story presents a really interesting contradiction in that typically, like, we think of conquering nations as not being a good thing. Like, I don't think anyone's like the British Empire was great for what they did. But at the same time, every nation they're taking over seems objectively awful in how they're treating people. So it's like you sort of root for them in the sense that, like, it does seem like Luxos is a better leader. But then at the same time, like, we're having a princess kill herself because of just who she was related to, which it presents a really interesting contradiction. I like that it's complicated. Honestly, I'm not interested in the romance of this at all. I don't really even want them together, to be honest. I think that's where it's going, but it doesn't appeal to me at all. That's not what I'm enjoying in this story. Secondhand Sisters Volume 2, this story is a nightmare. This situation is a nightmare. They all suck. They're all awful people. Like, he shouldn't have gone along with the lie. The sister should not have told the lie in the first place. But then also that doesn't give her the right to sleep with her sister's husband. Like, they all just are really traumatized from their childhoods and they're taking it out on each other. And I don't see a path here that's not going to be awful for all of them. To be honest with you, I think they all should just be alone. I don't think any of them deserve to be with each other. Like, it's just so messy, and I honestly can't even fathom where it's going to go from here. That is everything I read in the past couple of weeks. I'm going to try to keep it up and do one of these maybe every week or two and go over what I've read, just again to keep myself accountable to reading at a bigger pace. There will be some dedicated short form videos for some of these titles that I really enjoyed, so those will be up soonish probably. Let me know if there's anything in particular you want me to start reading. I can add it sort of my list to go through as I'm going through my collection. That's everything I read. Thanks for watching. See you in a couple weeks.